I'm not sure what your Thanksgiving dinners were like, but when I was growing up, we had at least three generations at one table, and invariably the discussion would turn from family news and words of gratitude to matters of the day: politics, business, community relations, and so forth. And once again, I don't know what sort of discussion takes place at your family meals, but at our multi generational, multi ethnic, multi religious table, discussing the matters of the day wasn't always completely harmonious. Now, my grandfather, who sat at the head of the dinner table, typically got the final say in any disagreement. But sometimes, depending upon the topic, someone might not let my grandfather have the last word. When I was 5, that was the signal for me to go play with toys. When I was 15, that was the signal for me to get up and wash the dishes. Because navigating these subtle challenges to an existing hierarchy, even a temporary family dinner table hierarchy, often creates some fireworks of their own. Sometimes more explosive fireworks than we had last night. And at the essence of the tension created by these discussions rests a perpetually perplexing puzzle that affects every member of human civilization. What's our place? When are the times when our knowledge or our passions or our obligations require us to take up more space? And when, perhaps, should we really be taking up less? Solving this puzzle is the key to our fulfillment, just as it is the key to understanding this week's Parsha, which begins with Moses' cousin, Korach, mobilizing 250 influential Israelites to challenge Moses' and Aaron's authority. And he begins by saying, Rav lachem, which is sort of difficult to translate. Rav means a lot, or great, or wonderful. It's the name for rabbi in Jewish tradition. Typically, you'll see it translated as you've gone too far in the text. But my preferred translation is you've taken too much for yourselves. Korach continues by saying, Ki chol ha'edah kulam kadoshim, uvtocham Adonai, umadua titnasu al kahal Adonai. For all the community is holy, every one of them, and God dwells in their midst. Why then do you raise yourselves above God's congregation? Korach almost appears insulted that Moses and Aaron get to call the shots. Like an incensed family member who suddenly realized that my grandfather might not know what he was talking about in that moment, but was talking about it anyway. Korach attacks the legitimacy of Moses' and Aaron's authority. Moses responds by arranging a showdown the next day, a standoff, with each party preparing competing offerings and awaiting God's response. But then he tells Korach, V'haya ha'ish asher yivchar Adonai hu hakadosh, Rav lachem b'nei Eli. Then the one Adonai chooses shall be the Holy One. You have taken too much for yourselves, sons of Levi. Moses' use of Korach's exact criticism in his rebuttal, Rav lachem, you've taken too much for yourselves, suggests that he, like Korach, feels that the other is seeking more prominence than he deserves or is healthy for the community. Moses then rebukes Korach for seeking the priesthood instead of appreciating his existing elevated role of ministering to Israel as a Levite. Ultimately, just like anyone foolish enough to criticize John F. Kennedy at our Thanksgiving table, Korach meets a gruesome end. The earth swallows him and his followers whole. Korach does not solve the puzzle of finding his space and place, but his spectacular failure provides some His spectacular failure provides some clues for how we can avoid a similar fate. The first clue comes from the very beginning of the Parsha. Very difficult to notice because there's a lot of names in there. Vayikach Korach ben Yitzhak ben Kahat ben Levi v'Datan v'Aviram b'nei Eliav v'on ben Pelet b'nei Reuven. Korach, son of Yitzhak, son of Kahat, son of Levi, took alongside Datan and Aviram the children of Eliav and On, the son of Pelet, all children of Reuven. The sages take note that the opening verb, vayikach, is singular. It's not plural, even though the subject of the sentence is not just Korach, but also all these other co-conspirators. And what the sages suggest is that Korach's intentions weren't simply ideological, but were driven by his ego. Korach takes himself and others, according to the rabbis, against Moses and Aaron, confident that he could supplant them. But ambition alone cannot qualify him to serve as Israel's leader. When Moses summons God to serve as an arbiter between him and Korach, God threatens to annihilate the entire community of Israel. But Moses and Aaron quickly intervene, begging for divine mercy. After Moses and Aaron get the remaining Israelites safely away from Korach and his followers, Moses then tells the people, Bezot ted'un, ki Adonai shalachani la'asot et kol hama'asim ha'ele. By this you will know that it was Adonai, our God, who sent me to do all of these things. Because of his relationship with God, Moses knows things that Korach simply cannot. He is uniquely suited to his responsibility, and he accepts his responsibilities unabashedly, sometimes risking his own life to save the people of Israel. It is his sense of obligation to God and to the Israelites, as well as his capacity to meet his obligations, that determine his space and place, not his ambition. The same must be true for us. As parents, we bear responsibility for guiding our children as they grow and develop. That not only requires us to assume a position of prominence within our families, but to master new skills and information in order to satisfy the duties of that position of parenthood. Just as teachers bear responsibility for their students, just as doctors bear responsibility for their patients, just as leaders of business, education, and communities bear responsibility for their institutions and those under their care. They achieve preeminence not by taking it for themselves, but by accepting the heavy burden of a responsibility that matches the knowledge, skills, and abilities that they have spent years, sometimes decades, cultivating. When we pair duty with capability, instead of being told, Rav lachem, you take too much, we are told, Rav etchem, you are much, for you have given much. The same can be true in all aspects of our lives, from the privilege and preeminence we seek to the preeminence we allow others to seek on our behalf, to the Thanksgiving dinner table. A little secret is my grandfather didn't always insist on having the last word. If you had the knowledge, commitment, and experience that surpassed his own, he just listened, even if what you had to say contradicted his beliefs. As we celebrate the birthday of our nation, as we ponder how to experience 248 more years of freedom, we would be wise to learn how to take up the space that is required of us to fulfill our obligations to one another, but not to blindly seek additional preeminence simply based upon our ambitions. And may this Shabbat be the Shabbat that we begin to solve the perpetually perplexing puzzle of finding our own space and place in our families, in our communities, in our workplaces and classrooms, in our country, in our people and beyond, by wedding our abilities to meaningful obligations. Shabbat Shalom.